There simply aren't enough superlatives to describe the type of newsman Tom Cherington was. But this time, we'd like to share another side of Tom Cherington with you, a side that, if you were fortunate enough to have known, will remain in your heart forever. Tom was a man of great wit. He was fun to be around. And we know that if he could, Cherington would be bellowing at us from this seat right on my right to get on with it. Dry your eyes, you people. Grab a glass of wine, good wine, mind you, and remember the good times, the silly times, times to make you laugh. And that's exactly what we do in this hour wake, if you want, for Tom. Joining us, some people who he's worked with for many years and just for a few years. Connie Smith, of course, who did the noon hour show up until very recently with Tom. Lawrence Diskin, who's worked with Tom for many years. Paul Hanover, a well-known personality in the community and a longtime friend. And Nicolas Olchowy, who was a director of the late-night news program with Tom Cherington for many years. And we welcome all of you. And I think with a thing like this, one must start at the beginning. It was back in the mid-'60s, Paul, and I think we can go to you first and find out maybe some of the funnier episodes of the earlier days when Tom came to CHML.
Well, of course, as I've often mentioned, that he exploded on the scene.
Indeed.
That's what he did. There was nothing, voice-wise, personality-wise, and the impact on the community. All of a sudden, the eyebrows went up, and the people took notice that we had something kind of special here. And of course, I think people phoned hoping they'd be hung up on. Really, madam. What was it? Oh, madam, please. That would be one of his favorite cutoff points, and that was it. Whether they needed to be cut off or not, he did it just to have a little fun and get things stirred up.
Paul, maybe you could help us out on this. You know, I've always been told that there's a story that I haven't had cleared yet, and that's that on the first or second night that Tom was in Hamilton, he wasn't having a whole lot of action on Action Line, and someone said, well, why don't we try and upset someone? And supposedly, some lady called with a cat up the tree, and he said, well, madam, I'll get your cat down with a Colt 45. Was that true?
Probably.
They were just reminiscing the other day about one of his Christmas shows, and this woman called up and said that, you know, I sleep with Santa Claus at Christmas. Of course, that was a great opportunity for him, and he raised a few eyebrows and got a lot of guffaws, and he says, well, I hope he remembers to put his rubber boots on. So that was Tom, all right. Friday nights was always a slow night, even when you were handling, and they would go wild trying to get some action. That was the wildest nights. But I think probably, as I mentioned, the way he handled the kids was something kind of special, the fun he had with them. And they had a special feeling for Tom Cherington. The kids have a way of knowing whether you're for real or not. Yeah. And I think, do you remember the Miles for Millions? Oh, yeah. The walk. Indeed. And I guess one of the first ones, there was sort of a competition with him and Mayor Victor Copps. And he had a lot of support. He had his Cherington's kids who followed him all around the whole route and kept him going. And after it was all over, he went to management and said, we got to do something for these kids. And he talked them into running a party for the kids. And he went out and got Courtcliffe Park and took all the kids out there, and they had a barbecue. And his Cherington kids really enjoyed them. So there was something special about that.
Maybe we can let everybody in on a little secret. That particular walk, that Miles for Millions walk, well, he and the mayor didn't exactly walk the whole way.
Oh, I didn't know.
From what I've been told, the limo was in certain places to not only carry them, but to sustain them with liquid nourishment.
We're supposed to have that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we're having some of Tom's favorite liquid nourishment tonight, as a matter of fact.
Except he didn't take it out of a plastic bottle with that little hook on the end. He took it like something like this.
Or something bigger, really. I mean, you know.
Always a nice wine glass.
Always a nice wine glass.
We've made mention of the "Oh, madam," which for a long time was Tom's trademark. As a matter of fact, Tom we have a little clip to show the viewers at home here, and perhaps now would be a time for you, Lawrence, to set this up.
Sure. This was at the CHML goodbye party. After 14 years, Tom said, we're going to go on to something new. That's when he came over here to do the television show, and we had a heck of a night. What you're going to hear is a song composed by Fred Moyes, who's a professor at McMaster and a good friend, and it's good fun.
And hence the "Oh, madam."
Hence the "Oh, madam."
Okay, if Dave is ready upstairs, let's have a listen to that.
And every night when people call the station, this is what they hear on Action Line. Oh, madam, it's incredible. It's disgusting, it's outrageous, it's obscene. Oh, madam, I'm not really chauvinistic, prejudiced, intolerant, or mean. I'm a very pleasant fellow in spite of how I sound. Oh, madam, you know I wouldn't lie. Just get back into the kitchen, dear, and wash the dinner dishes. Now, goodbye, 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 goodbye. And every night when people call the station, it's Cherington from 7 through till 9. Oh, madam, it's deplorable. The frightful state morality is in. Oh, madam, it's obnoxious. It's pernicious, it's revolting, it's a sin, whatever that is. Now tell me, ma'am, don't you think that sex is overrated? What's me, my dear? Oh, no, I'm much too shy. I know we call it action line, but not that kind of action, ma'am. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. But for all his famous rudeness, he's the kind of man the listeners love to hate. Though he's cranky and outspoken, in the beauty spots the people think he's great. And in the hearts of Hamilton supporters, Tom Cherington will never, never die. He'll simply pull the plug and say, thank you, ma'am, for calling. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Yes, he'll simply pull the plug and say, thank you, ma'am, for calling. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.
I'll not soon forget, not terribly long ago on the noon hour program, where Tom was introducing the lady who helped him formulate the plan to stop smoking, and he introduced her as, I would like you now to meet the woman who ruined my life.
That was Dan Washington.
What a marvelous guy. Lawrence, we have another clip we're going to set up. We've simply titled it Nonsense for the purpose of a short title here. Perhaps you can explain what we're going to see in here.
Actually, if you check that carefully, it should say nonsense.
Yes.
Nonsense. In the early days of the Cherington Show, we did some strange things, one of which was to go to a sex shop. We figured, well, the public would want to know what's on sale there. Well, we went and we found out, and of course you do something called a stand-up in order to set it up outside. Well, we were doing one and something a bit out of the ordinary happened.
How unlike Tom.
How unlike Tom.
Okay,
Hey, bro.
With that bit of information, let's look.
Would you believe that this store sells paraphernalia, merchandise around the world? We have customers from Buffalo, from South Africa, from Germany, from Japan. Get her to walk back.
We're not sure if she ever did. That brings us to our next clip, and not that it would have much to do with the last one, but it does have a bit of a tie-in. We title this Waterbed.
Ah, yes, waterbed. Well, in our never-ending role as the public consumer watchdog, we thought that we would do a segment on waterbeds. Tom had never been on a waterbed, nor did he ever want to be on a waterbed. It's plainly evident in this clip.
Okay, let's Dave, if you're ready with this next one, have a look at it now.
Ooh, see it bounce? A waterbed. Undulating like Morgana. Ooh. Should I have taken my shoes off?
No, that's fine.
Just a second. Just, Terry, that voice you heard is the vice president of the National Waterbed Company. Wait a second, are my legs showing? And, Terry, what happens? All right, it's very comfortable. I think I'm on the Queen Mary. Yeah, it's not bad, as a matter of fact. It's quite sensual.
Feel the small of your back? Support it?
So many years since I felt it, yeah. But, Terry, what happens if my bedmate gets in? Will I go out? Terry, get into bed with me. It's the first time I've ever made that offer to a man. And keep your distance. Oh, there we are.
That wasn't so bad, now was it?
Ooh, it's sensual.
Now, if you wait for about 2 or 3 seconds, it'll stop.
I don't think I can, Terry.
You have to learn to go with the flow, even in waterbeds.
Well, he always said, if I want victory at sea, I'll take a cruise.
Marvelous. Well, we're going to take a commercial break, and when Tom spotted an injustice, he often dealt with it right on the spot, and before our commercial break, we're going to show you another little bit. The way he did that was much like this.
Completely unimportant, I know, but at Mr. Trudeau's rooms there, they were serving champagne. So the Prime Minister is starting out by breaking the Ontario liquor laws, it seems, which I know many people would agree with.
Oh, Hearn, I know that's a subject close to your heart, one that you've researched at length over the last 35 years. What else have you got to say politically?
It's 11 o'clock, and now the news. Here's Tom Cherington.
Good news for a change on the labor scene. Hamilton striking bus drivers have a tentative agreement which they'll ratify or reject on Saturday.
Wasn't that many years ago that we recorded the introduction for that newscast, and the gentleman sitting to my left, Nicolas Olchowy, was the director of that show for almost all of its time. Nick, I think you have to bring us up to date with respect to Tom's arrival at Channel 11 and his introduction to the newscast.
Tom came to the station in the latter 60s and was assigned the 11 o'clock newscast. And I was directing the newscast at that time, so I continued to do so with Tom, and that was quite an experience in many regards. First of all, you do have this big hulk of a man, and he came into the newsroom, and immediately you noticed the few things that he tried to change. One of them was, instead of using 5 words, he'd use 1. And so he continued to use action words, live words, something that would graphically describe things.
How graphic was it, Nick?
Well, very graphic.
On camera, well, we got by on camera, but it was behind the scenes that some of the more interesting things happened.
Tell us the story.
Well, as we all know, Tom liked to chit-chat. He liked to tell stories. But someone who was able to out-talk Tom at all times was Jane Grey. And we all know that. Lady Jane.
Yeah.
And Tom invited Jane to one of his late-night talk shows, which happened after the newscast. And at that time, Jane was heavy into numerology, so that when she came on, the phones just lit up. I mean, it was incredible. However, one thing with Jane was that she never really liked to take direction. She wanted to keep on talking. And of course, we had difficulty, Tom had difficulty, in introducing commercials. So sometimes we just went to a commercial. We'd do the commercials, we'd come back, and Jane's still talking. So we managed to somehow finish that show, and in honor of Jane, Tom and I invited her for a little nightcap. And so we ambled down to the corner, but Jane said, only on the condition, Tom, that you take me home. Now, at that time, Jane had difficulty walking. She had a cane. She also had a wheelchair. So that, I think, sets the scenario for what I'm about to tell you. After our nightcap, I left them, and the next day I find out this. Apparently, Tom is wheeling Jane near her apartment, which is right by here, and somehow the wheel of the wheelchair got caught in the corner of the sidewalk, and the wheelchair and Jane just spilled right over. Well, Tom was horrified. He thought he had killed Jane, and he's groping to pick her up, and at this point, Jane is striving to get up herself. And so she's pulling on his trousers, and what's happening is that his trousers are coming down. And just at that precise moment, a taxi cab driver is going by, stops, rolls down the window and says, "Mr. Cherington, do you need some help with your date?"
And Jane had said, "No, leave." No, she was a marvelous lady.
Well, they just started roaring. I think they woke up half the neighborhood.
Yeah, true story.
Did she ever analyze his numbers and tell him what was good and bad?
I think she
everybody.
did. But
She did everybody's numbers, yeah.
It's cost me a lot of money trying to get 3 and 6 going somewhere.
We're going to get Lawrence to set up our next little clip here. This one we've entitled Massey. Lawrence, what's this all about?
Oh, Massey, yes. This was one summer. We used to go on the Cherington Show, hopefully every summer, overseas to try and do some overseas work. The Israeli government asked us if we would go over and perhaps do some work there. Little did we know that when we arrived, we were in the middle of the war with Lebanon, and it was a bit of a testy situation. They took us to the border, and this is a war zone. But even in a war zone, Tom managed to perhaps find a little bit of humor. He was, of course, the spokesman for Massey Ferguson Tractors, and he found a Massey Ferguson tractor.
Okay. With that bit of information, let's look at Massey Ferguson.
This is a little message for the chairman of Massey Ferguson. You can't sell your goddamn tractors in Canada and North America, but these impoverished Christian Lebanese, they're buying them. Look, in this miserable part of the world with war and all the rest of it, they're buying your equipment. But in North America, you're going down the drain. For here, now more than ever, Massey makes shekels.
Did they get any reaction from that?
Massey, well, of course, if you remember, Massey Ferguson didn't last much longer after that. Whether that commercial added anything to, I don't think the board, the chairman of the board ever saw that. There's a lot of bits from overseas footage that no one will ever see. We simply can't show you, sorry.
That's right. We have a lot of material that was done for the golf tournament here and various other things that rules and regulations as it pertain to the broadcasting industry would not allow us to put them on the air, but they certainly showed the other side, the lighter side of Tom as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, going now to Connie. Connie, you started the noon hour program with Tom, and a lot of people here certainly, and certainly everybody at the SPCA knows, and you know in particular Tom's great affinity for animals, and particularly dogs.
He loved animals, and I think that's one thing I shared with Tom in that 1 year that I worked side by side with him. He loved dogs. In fact, he often said, "Oh, I like them more than some people, especially
most people,
especially politicians." But the first, some politicians. The first time I met Tom, in fact, I met him with his dog Boomer. Paul, you were talking about him,
Boomer,
and Boomer was wandering under the news desk one night when Tom had come in to read the 11 o'clock news, and this desk started moving, and he said, "That's just Boomer under there. Don't worry about that." But anyway, we did start this Adopt a Pet feature on the noon show 1 year ago, and with some trepidation because we didn't know how it would work out. Well, it was such a success story, and that did more for Tom, I think, than almost anything else. He would interview the Prime Minister and make national news, but if he didn't get a home for that puppy, he was upset. He was hurt. Every day.
He checked the phone all day.
Every day. Yeah. Have you heard from Mike Field yet? Did we get that one a home? Yeah. And that's a side of Tom that many people didn't see, and I think we've got some tape that shows some of his... as we were talking. But anyway, the animals, he loved the animals. The little monkey we had on from the African Lion Safari. I love that little monkey. When are you going to bring the monkey on again? And in fact, he was very outraged over the mistreatment of animals, too. Oh, yeah. And I don't think we could say on television what he thought should be done to people that mistreated animals.
I think it had something to do with genitalia and strange devices.
It did. I don't think we should go any further than that.
Very tight, vice-like things, if I remember correctly.
You know, a few of us were sitting around the newsroom the other day, and we thought, what should we do in Tom's name? And we thought, he would appreciate a donation to the SPCA, so a few of us have gotten together to do that. And I'd like to say that the SPCA is accepting donations from anyone in Tom's name, and I think he'd be very pleased to hear that.
That's terrific.
I guess that dog was a Newfoundland.
Let me tell you about Boomer.
Let's go over here.
I was there at Boomer's birth. Boomer was one of my pups from Bernie and Sam, and he came over, fell in love immediately, basically because Boomer climbed out of the box and made a mess in his lap. From that point on, it was love at first sight, and every time the phone would ring, anytime after 1 in the morning, it was probably Tom. My dog has got an itch. What's wrong with my dog? He's got a problem. Anyway, we have to take a short commercial break. We'll do so. Tom often grabbed the moment not to mention the laugh with a quick quip, much like this one.
In one pet store, they call them racing crabs, and the youngsters come in and buy a stable of crabs and race them against each other.
What do they eat? What's that stuff?
They're scavengers, actually. They'll eat almost anything you put in here, meat or vegetation.
They're a big seller, eh? Crabs.
Very big seller.
I know lots of guys that faint at the sound of that.
Tom, we're looking at you as the sort of the venerable war horse that holds us.
A venerable war horse. I'm a young war horse, but I'm going to be dumping. I like dumping. I'm dumping the water in the thing and waiting for the spigot to come out.
God knows you've been dumping on everybody in Hamilton for years.
That's right. I made a few bucks doing it.
This particular footage that you're looking at is an annual event. It's a media competition. We try to do what firefighters have done in past and in present and represent ourselves as something that we're not, and usually ended up showing ourselves to be what we were. And that's not very adept at fighting fires or moving water or much of anything else. But Tom, always the good sport, always involved, if at all possible, such as you saw there. Well, not terribly long ago, we started a campaign called the Pride Campaign, which is to introduce a whole new way of promoting ourselves within the community and promoting the community. We're together, we're the ones, and Tom was all for that. And to do that, we had to get some pretties, or some shots that really reflect our community and make things look at their absolute best. And we worked very hard at that. And Connie, we tried that with Tom as well. And we're going to take a look right now at some footage dealing with the Pride Campaign.
There's pride inside. Well, that's how it ended up looking. Together we're the one.
We're listening.
Our eyes are running.
Recording.
That's not sense of the eye.
Hey!
She's out of control. There's a Niagara coming out of her eyes and her nose. With a full flusher out of the starboard nostril. Okay, come on.
Tom did that to me all the time. He would get me laughing so hard, I could not function. And that's why we lost the bucket brigade, by the way. I was laughing so hard, I couldn't grab that bucket of water and pass it on.
But, I mean, he was hard to break up. I mean, I've been on, I don't know how many shoots with him, all over the place. Yeah. You couldn't crack him. I mean, the nun thing was particularly funny because he actually cracked. But, I mean, he never cracked up. Always a professional. But, boy, he sure
got us
loved
cracking.
He always made us suffer. Yeah.
Oh, we could hardly talk sometimes. But he added something to the newsroom, that levity.
He did.
Even though it was professional and serious, every day there was a joke, every day a laugh.
Well, I think in the last 30 seconds or so that we have, we're going to turn him over to Lawrence, who spent most of his broadcasting career working with Tom for a small toast, hence the wine. And Lawrence, we'll turn the final tribute over to you, sir.
Glass in hand, Tom's best wine in it. Tom, we don't know if you believed in heaven, but we know where you are if you're in your particular Valhalla. It contains a breath of the Mediterranean air, good wine, good food, of course, good women, and of course, bicycles. He loved his bicycles, and specifically roads with no grates. Here's to you, Tom.
Here's to Tom.
We discuss issues with members of the municipal, provincial, and federal levels of government.
If you've heard Tom Cherington on talk, on news, on interviews, you have heard the best, and I make no exceptions.
Go on, Bob, you're the host. Keep it going. No dead air. We'll get memos.
Talk to Fred. No more memos.
You know, every once in a while, a situation or a person comes along that you just have to mention the name and everybody knows what you're talking about.
The next 8 years in Berlin were marked by the constant flow of refugees from east to west.
Your Tom Cherington was interviewing me this afternoon, and he threw a couple of unexpected questions at me.
I'm a young war horse, but I'm going to be dumping. I like dumping. Would you turn your television set down, please, sir?
It's 11 o'clock. And now the news. Here's Tom Cherington.
Good news for a change on